those who have been marginalized and those who have been pushed out of the equation and those who have been disrespected for years. So based on that, like, okay, I graduated from Boston Latin, not to my own horn, but I went there, I had to take a test to get in. I didn't get in because of affirmative action. There was a small window where it was letting kids in, and I didn't agree with that. You bust your behind, you work hard.
Absolutely.
We're just as smart as any other race on the planet Earth. But the thing is, we have not been given the same resources and the same starting point. So because we're not given the same starting point, that's when it makes it unfair, and they're trying to make up for it. I tell folks
that's affirmative action.
No, we need something better than affirmative action.
No, but that was the premise of affirmative action, though. Everything that you're saying is because the problem that we had in this country, we have in this country, is that you don't allow us to, we don't even get an opportunity to be at the door. Forget being at the table. So when you say you don't want affirmative action, I get it doesn't exist right now. However,
no, I want something better.
Yes, we need something better. And so we have a whole history that needs to, one, be addressed, two, properly changed, right? So it can't
Stephanie,
just be.
Stephanie,
I'm just gonna jump right in. So I don't think that you can just say, I wanted to go. We don't want anything to go back because what we know is that those programs did not work. Affirmative action was meeting quota so that you had someone who would have an advanced degree, be at a very low level in the organization, just so they can say that they were there, but they were never given the tools or the resources to be successful in that organization. So what we're saying right now is when you get a pool of applicants, I want you to look across the board and see everyone. And the pool of applicants, you want to be equal. You want the site to be equal when you're looking at applications. But we know historically the site is not equal. If your name is something other than what a tradition, you have a benefit. Your name is William. That's my husband's name, right? So my maiden name is not, Everett. And so my maiden name is Fawnfield. It's a very Southern Black. You know what we did in our lives as slaves, right? It's very specific. So when you look at my name, my maiden name, you knew who I was. When you look at Stephanie Everett, you don't know who I am because it is not a name that is really attached to one ethnicity. So we have to figure out how when I talk about we need to change systematic racism, I don't say we just start with the police. We have to look at the institutions, we have to look at the education, we have to look at so many different systems so that we are all equal. And right now, we're just not there. Right. Even through all the rallies, we're not there.
Right, so they need to provide something better than affirmative action. In other words, if I'm sitting at a table and people know that I'm sitting there, just go, he's just there because they had to fill their quota. That's disrespectful. No. I think that is a certain way that you can do it. I don't know the way completely, but it's some way that is better than affirmative action, where people can be looked upon as a respectful, dignified, decent professional in their field, as opposed to, they're just there. No. They don't do that. They don't do that to other ethnicities. They don't do that to other groups. The way they treat us, black on black crime. Come on, black on black crime. Why you make that an issue when you don't say white on white crime?
Hispanic on Hispanic crime.
You don't say that.
I'm in the courts all the time and no one's ever said this is a black on black crime. Like, it's not a crime. It's not anywhere in the statutes. It is something that, unfortunately, even minorities say over and over again, right? It's just crime. If you harm someone, it's just a crime. And so we ourselves have to stop saying these little anecdotes that are really oppressive to us, right? So if we stop saying that someone was hurt or this one happened, there's youth violence, and it's like, well, what age does youth violence stop? Because we also see someone can be in their mid-20s and they're committing violent act. Are they included in the youth violence or are they not? Are they just now black on black crime? Like, where does it stop and where does it begin? And because of that, we just need to stop saying it. There's some ownership on ourselves of saying black on black crime that we need to stop saying.
Yeah, some of the labels are not good.
No.
And I think that we need to recognize a lot of stuff that has been done in this country has been very unfair to black people, to women. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
To poor people.
To poor.
You know what I mean? And so I think that we need to address certain things, approach certain things, and maybe relabel things and look for doing things a better way. Because I believe that people laugh at reparations when we say 40 acres and a mule. I don't laugh at reparations because you know, the Japanese were given reparations, and America bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And
after the war, America spent millions of dollars rebuilding Japan, which later on became one of our greatest economic competitors. And so you're right.
Yeah. So it's a lot.
A lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do. So all the work that needs to be done, Stephanie, as a lawyer.
Yes.
You're a lawyer and you're running for public office.
I am.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from, you know, where you were raised, and educationally and stuff like that.
So born and raised in Boston, specifically Mattapan.
Excellent.
So came home to hospital on Clockwork Street on one end and was on the other end until about 11. My family owns a house on Wellington Hill Street. We moved to this day, they still own it. It's like the best thing. And then we moved on Cummins Highway, which is in the 12th, when I was 13 years old. So I've been in this district that I'm running for over 30 plus years. We bought our own home in this same district 13 years ago. Awesome. So I don't come from simple means. I don't come from things that handed to you. I think when people hear that I'm an attorney, they think that I had something given to me that helps me out. So my dad spent 90% of my life in jail. My mom suffers from mental health illness. And this community had two options. We all, have two options when you have someone like me in your community. You either tell your children not to play with me, don't talk to her, because there's trouble in the home, and we all know we all have that house, right? Don't go there. Or you have a community that takes you in. And for me, the community took me in.
Awesome.
And so I went to Latin school because I didn't have available parents. There was no way I was going to be successful in Latin. So I was a double 60. Actually, they started a class for my class.
Which Latin did you go to?
Latin school. So they started
Boston Latin.
Boston Latin school.
Yes. Latin Academy.
Nope. I went to Boston Latin school.
This is a difference.
Yes. So there is a difference. And so my daughter went to Boston Latin Academy. She's a graduate of Boston Latin Academy. But, I'm always rooting for my kids to try to get back into the Wolverine status that I was in at one point. So when I was there, actually there was so many of us, black and brown students, that got kept back the first year, that they created a double 60 class for us. Yes. So there was a lack of understanding. For me, I went to the Rogers Middle School before I went over to Latin school. Yeah, so I'm dating myself. Everybody doesn't know what the Rogers is. So the Rogers, my history teacher made a big deal, because I guess I don't remember taking the test. I remember my history teacher having an entire class about Boston Latin School, how proud he was of me, and how I had scored one of the top scores in the state. But I don't remember taking this test. But without having systems in place at home to be supportive, you're not going to be able to do well at Boston Latin School. There was, our assistant headmaster was Miss Edwards. Miss Edwards she was fantastic. And there were programs they tried to put me in place, but unfortunately I couldn't get those programs to really sink in with me, because I was going home to chaos. Right? And so when at a certain point I went to Foxborough High School, and in my junior year I was not the best of students, and I was not, I was in and out of doing too much. My mother would send me away all the time. If you get in one fight, you're getting sent to Georgia. Another fight, you're going to Maryland. Another fight, you're going to, I was sent everywhere. And so I had one family member, a friend's family, my mother had said to me, you all have to go home, you have to go to bed. I was in an alternative school my senior year. So I graduated with the kids adults who went to school at Madison Park, an evening program. So I'm still dating myself. But my program was based out of East Boston. So she said, you all have to go home to take SATs. And I said, I'm not taking my SATs. No one had spoken to me about SATs or even thought that I was capable of going to college. She showed up the next morning with some pencils and a check and was like, I didn't ask you. I'm telling you, you're going. I use that same thing with my kids now. I didn't ask you. I'm telling you. No, she was a parent. She was someone who decided I was more than what I was shown and what I was told. And so from that, I had a child at 19 years old. When I was pregnant with my second daughter, I have to do better. And so I went to Northeastern, was 6 months pregnant. I graduated in 2002, a few months after having my third child. And then went to Suffolk Law School and had my fourth child, and then went to the State House. So I went to the State House as a state rep. Where I met Pastor Dickerson was before that. I was working at Metropolitan Area Planning Council on youth violence prevention. As I said, I wasn't the best student growing up. So I went to a lot of funerals, involved in a lot of things. And so I felt like I had an ownership to give back to my community. I would see the kids acting up, but they saw us acting up, right? So let's be honest. I'm watching you do what we taught you. And now we're older, and I'm like, no. We had things going on at home. I know your family, they're good.
Good, yes.
But we had shown them that this was how you get glory in your community, by being the person who can fight, being the person that was most feared, right? Wow. And having the biggest reputation. And so because of that, I went and worked on the Shannon Grant. So I administered the Shannon Grant with the Youth Violence Prevention Grant that was administered from Boston all the way up to Gloucester. And that program was about intervention of police and intervention partners to work together so we can stop the suppression. So we're talking about defunding of the police and the issues that are going on. In 2006 is what I was doing this, right? Trying to allocate funding so that we can create better relationships with not just prevention partners, but with kids, and really getting to real kids who are really suffering. Through that work, what I realized is that we seem to think of ourselves, our children, as one whole group. If you live in Mattapan, you live in Dorchester, you're this type of child. You have this type of expectation. However, if you look at the individual child, I remember being called angry when I was younger. And I was so mad that they called me angry. And as an adult, I was angry. I was beyond angry. But my father wasn't around. My mother had mental health issues that made me take care of my little sisters. My stepfather had substance abuse issues. So I'm watching friends grow up. I prayed for friends. Where other people just had the doorbell ring and they go outside, I didn't have that. I was in my house being the daughter, being the mother. Yes. And so I remember, I'll never forget praying for friends because I wanted someone to ring the doorbell for me just one time. Could somebody come and open the door for me? And that's what propelled me into doing public service. So I took that from the Shannon Grant. When I passed the bar, I didn't know I was going to pass the bar. So I'm still dealing with a lot of things going on.
You didn't know you was going to pass the bar?
Because I knew I needed to go to school. I knew I wanted to be an attorney. Claire Huxtable made that very clear to me that I should be an attorney. And Perry Mason. And so when I graduated law school, the next thing you have to do is take the bar exam. I went through a lot in life. So I've had these challenges where you think something great is happening and then it just falls from underneath you. So I never allowed myself to believe that I was capable, that I was able, I was blessed enough to receive that. So when my bar exam came out, my husband had it in his back pocket. And he called me, and I came home and he said, your results are in. And it's like, if it's thick, you have to take it again. If it's thin, you passed. And I drove up the street, and it was a year after we bought our house, and he's saying, you got to get home. And we have my son in the car. He's 1 year old, and I'm screaming, just let me see it. So as soon as I pulled up, he pulled it out of his pocket, and the sun hit it at the same time, and I could see the words, congratulations.
Wow.
So that's how I knew I passed. Didn't even open it up. The sun. But that was God, right? Because I was doubting the whole way home that I was going to actually have to take this exam again. And so much doubt and not working on myself. I was so busy I wasn't doing the work for myself. I did not take my license out and hang it up. And just my diploma, I kept it in the envelope I received them in because I just felt like someday someone's going to come and tell me they made a mistake and they're going to take it back. Right? So just trying to go through that. But because I just never had someone say, this is what you're supposed to be. My aunt used to come to my house and say, I can't believe you turned your life around. And she'd say it every time she talked to me. And I was telling my sister this one day, and she was like, that's like she gave you a compliment and took it right back. But I was so used to that dialogue that I didn't pay attention to what she was saying. So one day she lives away, so she came over the house and she said it to me again. And I said, I want to know what I turned my life around from. I was never on drugs. I was never an alcoholic. I was never a prostitute. I never was in jail. Like, what did I turn my life around from? What I really did was I survived all the stuff that you all let me sit in. Instead of taking me. And so really, and that was like my turning point of things
How long ago was this?
That's deep.
It was less, I've been in my house for 13 years, so maybe 10 years ago, if that, but it took me a while. So even doing the things I was doing, I had this thing in the back of my head, like, you're not worthy. This is not where you're supposed to be.
It's huge to overcome that type of mentality.
It is, because you just hear, my mother used to say to me, if you just lost a little bit more weight, you can model. If you just did this, you could do this. Right. And so it was like you would never. I mean, but part of it's her mental health, right? So but this is the backhand compliments that I would get from family. And so that, really sinks into who you are. So as a mother, I tell my daughters, especially, like, the things that may aggravate me the most about you are the things I know that are going to make you greater later in life. So
let me ask you this. Do you feel you're completely healed of this?
Yes, I had to forgive them in order to forgive myself. Okay. So my mother.
How long was that process?
It's an everyday process. It's not. I wouldn't tell anyone that you're just. Ongoing. It's ongoing. No, my mother and I have, because I call it an on and off switch. So sometimes her mental health is better, sometimes it's not. But I'm her healthcare proxy. Despite all the things that we've gone through, I'm still the one responsible for her, and it's okay. Right, and so I've tried to push it off to other siblings. She won't have it. So we can go months without speaking. But if something happens, she knows, like, I need to call Stephanie. She's going to take care of it, and that's the position I'm okay with playing in. So if there's something going on, I need to know what it is and fix it that way. But I don't. It took me a while to even forgive my dad. Right, so my dad had a heart issue, but still chose to drink and do drugs and go to jail all the time, right? And it's like, well, if you would have did
he pass away? He
passed away 10 years ago this October. His last October, I wasn't speaking to him, but I was in Georgia. He was in a room down the hall. He wouldn't come out to eat with us. I can't tell you to this day, no idea why we weren't speaking. But when he had his first heart attack in January, 2 months later, I was there. And it never crossed his mind my daughter wasn't going to show up. He just knew I was going to be there. And then I got a call in October that he was in hospice care. And I get there and they tell me he was going to die. And I've never seen death in this format before. So he's burst of energy. But he asked me, he was in a hospice. It was a beautiful home. He asked me to get him a cookie. And so I had a 3-month-old baby at this point. And he said, you don't need a cookie, though. Don't you get a cookie. I just need a cookie. And so those are the things. Wow. So yes. And then went on to tell me all the things that were not right at the hospice facility and that he wanted me to fix. We didn't have this, but I realized that this is not our relationship. Right. We never got to this point. My cousins will tell me more about my dad. I learned more about him when he died than I knew when he was alive. And things made sense. So one of the things that made sense is, like, I got my license here. I went to Georgia, and he says, I'm going to teach you how to drive. I have a license. But what he said, no, you need to learn how to drive as a black woman so you don't get pulled over. And if you do, this is what you have to do. Right. So there was so I teach my kids the same way. Take your foot off the gas so the car automatically slows down when you're going down the hill, because it'll speed up and you don't want the police to be at the bottom and pulling you over. So he taught me a different way. So when he died, I had to forgive him because now all the stories come out. All right. Mercy. He was born in Georgia, but he was born in a shack. My grandmother couldn't go to a hospital. I have an aunt who has a permanent brain injury. I didn't know it was a permanent brain injury. I just thought that she had a disability. Mm-hmm. But during desegregation, someone slammed her head into a pillar. Wow. And she was raped. So for him, it wasn't, I don't want to be a dad for you. It's literally every time I take a step forward, something happens and I'm going to react because I have to protect. He was the oldest of 16. So I'm going to protect. And that protection caused him his own guilt, his own anxieties that he never truly expressed. But when I had to sit back and think about it when I was planning his memorial, it all made sense.
All right.
You begin to put the dots together and it fell into place.
Of who he was and who he was trying to. And so a few weeks ago, as you know, first time in my life, I had someone call me the N-word, like on Zoom. And because we're in Boston where racism is not outwardly, it's very inwardly, those words don't freely flow from people's mouths.
Boston is both.
It is.
It's both big time.
No, but I just have...
Covert and overt.
Yes, but I just have never been called it. So I remember, like, we all have heard the stories about slavery. Like, that could never be me. Some years ago, I said, "You're right, it couldn't be me."
You never was called that?
Never. Wow. Not to my face. And this was not directly to my face. It was on Zoom, but it took me back, and I had to process it. But now I've experienced racism, right? Like I've experienced being told to do something or not told to do something based on my race.
Right.
Absolutely have experienced racism. I can give you a whole book about those experiences. However, what I did not experience is someone being bold enough to say that to me. I was also not the best of kids, like I said, so I don't think I would have called me that name when I was younger either.
Listen, I want to switch because we're going to talk a little bit about why are you running, what are you running for, and why are you running?
So,
and give us about 3 minutes your platform, and then we're going to open up the calls.
So the biggest thing that I want to do is, one, I want to make sure that we have a voice at the table. We've been marching to the State House as long as I've been alive, right? So we march to the State House, we make demands on what we want, but we have to trust someone else that may or may not look like us to go into those rooms and really debate for us. Having lived experience, having experience being in the State House, just being present is what we need in the State House. We need someone in the room at the table with a very loud mama voice when needed to make sure that we are not discounted, that the issues that hurt us are actually being addressed, the things that uplift us are being funded. So I'm running because we have a lot of work to do, but I know we can do it together. I want to be the voice to make sure that we have this moment. We're in this moment where we can start seizing a lot of things and we can't let it fall by the wayside. And we also are in a moment where we can't wait for someone to figure out what that building looks like. It's day one, hit the ground and running. You have to be ready to go. I was in the State House during the Great Recession. We all experienced, everyone here knows 10 years ago what it looked like, what foreclosures looked like, your neighbors moving out because they couldn't afford it anymore, because they lost their house. You take everything we went through 10 years ago and throw in the fact that our children are not being properly educated.
Absolutely.
Right? And so the resources that our children need to be successful weren't present. So I want to make sure that we actually have a strong voice about housing to keep us in our homes, both tenants and homeowners. I want to make sure that our education is, I don't want to promise that you're going to do right by our kids. I want you to actually do right by our kids. Right? So when we talk about reallocation of funding, well, the first thing that we can do is put money toward education, because it's the great equalizer. Right? And it's what you were talking about in the beginning, right? It's the equalizer. If we all have the same level of education going in, then we can start dealing with the systematic racism, because everything is equal. So if we pour into our education system and not promise, but actually do, then we are actually moving toward dealing with racism. And then making sure that my youngest son is my foster son, and he has special needs. Those needs were not addressed when we went in quarantine, right? So his DCF worker said to me recently when he was in class, what happens if you didn't have 2 laptops? One was for him to be in class, the other was for his specialist to monitor him in class. I didn't even think about that. I had the ability. How many other families did not have the ability to bring those resources into the home? Right, so that's a voice that's missing. When I was at the State House, we did minority contracting. There's nothing better than to grow your own community. But minority contractors do not have the capital to bid on state and local projects. But if we reallocate money, we put it in a pot, maybe we can do a real low interest rate and keep that money going so that they can actually build on those. So,
well, you know what? Time is swiftly just flying away.
Yes, that's fine.
And I want to open up the phone lines to any listeners that might want to ask questions here. We have Representative Stephanie, well, not representative yet, but
candidate.
Yeah, candidate for state representative, Stephanie Everett, and you can ask her some questions. The number is 857-353-0207, and it's at the bottom of the screen as well. That's 857-353-0207, and you'll call in if you can, and you can ask Stephanie a question or two. Praise God. You know, as we go forward.
You need to consider writing a book. Your story is a fascinating one. I'm incredibly impressed. That
my friends tell me to do this all the time. It's like 10 years in the making. I started. I do have a book, and it's called God's Way. I just haven't finished it. It's like because that's the only way I could think that this happened, right? So I always tell people, use me as an example. So of what not to do and what to do, right? And so, you know, my most fascinating time is actually
caller?
Ooh.
How are you doing?
We're doing speaker?
Good.
All right.
My name is Aisha Miller.
Aisha.
How are you, Bishop?
Isn't she lovely, right?
She is. That's Aisha.
All right. Every time I hear your name, I want to sing that song. See, Aisha, you make us all smile because you always smiling.
She does.
We need to call her Sister Sunshine. Sister Sunshine. All right, Aisha, go ahead. What's your question?
Bishop, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to call in and relay to Stephanie that you are a breath of fresh air. And although I've known Stephanie since I was 13 years old, and everything she says is authentic. And she has grown tremendously in her own right and fought against all obstacles to be where she is today. And I can just remember, you know, being in church, Bishop, and I, you know, hear you say sometimes my hope is built on nothing less.
All right.
Jesus Christ, Jesus' blood and righteousness.
Yes.
And Stephanie is in the mold of that.
Wow.
Because of her hope and her faith to get to where she is today, and all the things that she stated today, and all the struggles she has built that type of foundation to stand and now run to be our next representative for 12 Suffolk. I'm a happy, proud Mattapan resident all my life, and this just makes me proud. And Stephanie, I'm proud of you, and I am with you. I've been with you since I was 13, and I'm going to stay with you as we cross over that bridge on September 1st.
Thank you, Aisha. Aisha has been there. Aisha has seen a lot of it. So Aisha and I have known each other for a long time. So Aisha was one of the first people who found out I was epileptic. So I had my first seizure at 14.
Wow. Mercy.
Yeah, so because you just have to add more stuff on. But Aisha never treated me differently. Right,
awesome.
So Aisha,
Sunshine.
she is. We have been laughing and enjoying and growing with each other for a long time, Aisha, without telling our ages, but for decades. We have been doing this work and being committed and involved, and I appreciate you so much, Aisha.
All right. Thanks for calling,
Thank
Aisha.
you.
Thank you very much.
Have a blessed day.
Thank you, you too.
All right.
How has the campaign been going for you? We're looking at September 1st, which is right around the corner.
Yes.
Is this your first rodeo?
No, it's not.
No?
And I didn't plan on doing this again. I was happy with, I did it 3 times. I was happy supporting and playing the background. Oh, earrings falling. And playing the background. There was something I really want, making sure people had a voice, and if I needed to be used in a way to just help you figure out what that was, I was fine. So no, and I wasn't gonna run. It was my daughters, and again, like the blessings that you pull into your daughters that they bring back to you. And I was like, well, I've run 3 times already.
Right.
Why do we want to do this again? And my kids didn't understand me giving myself a timeline. It was like, who told you can't run another time? And I was like, well, statistically, you should just be doing 3 times is what we're told. If you run any more than that, you're a perennial candidate. And so I didn't want to be that. And so I was like, I don't want to be at the end of any article. I don't want to.
You mean you want to be a perennial?
A perennial, yes, perennial.
Yeah, okay.
And I just didn't want to be in that situation. A protection, right? So I definitely protect myself. And my daughters just were not understanding of that. There was a lot of conversations of, that's not who you showed us to be. Right. You tell us, if we fail, we have to do it again.
It's tough when the kids come back with your stuff, right?
It is. And, I had good friends like Aisha. I had conversations. We didn't get into this race until April 13th. And so it was like 6 weeks of, Stephanie, this is why you should do it, or Stephanie, why you shouldn't do it. You know, and this is how I'm trying to protect you so that you don't do it and you don't get hurt, or this is how I'm trying to push you so that you can see more. So it did take a lot of pushing on my end to get me to this place. But I realized that we were in the midst of a crisis.
Yeah.
We're still in the midst of a crisis. Yes. And it was the time for leadership to really rise. Mm-hmm. And so I waited. I waited like a lot of people waited. We all waited. We waited for government to say what they were going to do. We waited for the person occupying the White House to finally tell us the truth about what was going on. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I'm making calls to our Age Strong community. I'm making calls to family and friends, just checking in.
Yeah.
And everything that they were talking about just led back to you should be running because you know what we're dealing with. Wow. And in our community, came together. You needed Pampers, I was in Roxbury dropping off Pampers. If you needed money, I was putting money in accounts. Anything that we could do, we actually had. So we were waiting on something that we had in our community. We just needed someone to say, we have it.
Right.
Like, let's activate.
Wow.
You know, I was doing dinners before I decided to run, I would do dinners with single women and men on Fridays, just because they were home alone, and we want to make sure that mental health is right, to giving them something to look forward to on Fridays. What are you doing? What are you cooking? You know, what's the project that you've been saying you want to do for a long time? And so out of that bore the understanding from me that everything I'm trying to wait for someone else to do, I actually should be doing. And I don't want to do this forever. Right. We have an urgency going on right now, and that urgency needs proper addressing. And
amazing.
I'm here.
All right,
there you go.
All right, so she's here, and we're here. We want to hear from you. You can call us, you know, and let us hear what you have to share in regards to Stephanie running for state representative in the 12th Suffolk District. Okay, you can call here at New England Christian Television Network. The number is 857-353-0207. That's 857-353-0207. All right. So call us, and talk to Stephanie. Ask her questions.
Amazing woman. Amazing story.
I'm enjoying this conversation for sure. So Stephanie, give us your perspective on curtailing the violence that we see in the greater Boston area.
So I just had this conversation with Pastor Odom last night and someone else earlier, so I feel like this is the third time, so maybe somebody who's listening is going to get this. I am not the same as any of you all are.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you try to create policy that makes us the same, one of us is going to fail. Youth violence prevention is that. It's been based on a model of all children who are engaged in gang activity.
You said like just one cookie cutter model?
Yes. It's like you come from a single parent home, or you come from a certain neighborhood, which indicates that you are going to be susceptible to gang activity, even though your parents could still be together. They own their own home. They may own a lot of properties, but you don't know what's going on in the home. So when I was at MAPC, one of the things that I did when I was working on the Shannon Grant is really look across the country and how different states were addressing youth violence. One of the things that I feel that we need to do more of is look at a child as who they are. So if you look at one child, if you just give myself, I just told you what I went through at my home.
Right.
So if you saw me fighting outside and you knew this background, you wouldn't think I was angry, you would think I was hurt and I needed resources. But I don't just need resources. My mother needed resources. My father needed trauma therapy, right? And my stepfather needed resources. So we had all these other things going on. So I can give any one of you $1 million right now, and you can pour into one child. But if that child still goes back home with a mother who has mental health, underemployed, dealing with domestic violence, a significant other or not in the home, everything you just poured into the child goes to the background, because what we teach our children is homes first. So if child's like, I want to go do these positive things, but my mother needs, my sibling needs, that's who's going to win. So we need to look at our children and as not just a group of children, but what's going on in their household. You can eventually group some, But if you come from a home like my home where you need more resources, not just directly to the child, because I may not have needed as many resources. My family needed the resources, right?
If your family got the resources,
and so, if you have to look at the whole child, look at their education system, what's going on at home. I remember going to school and feeling so inferior. If I was out of school right now, if this was 10 years ago, I told you what happened. My mother's 2 unavailable parents, a third parent who's also unavailable, present in the home but unavailable. I wouldn't succeed. I would be checking out of school because I'm going to go to class with those who have, whether they have 1 parent in a home, 2 parents, but they have the resources, the love, and the support. And so they're going to be able to engage the teacher. Where I'm not going to be able to engage because I didn't do any work for 5 months. I didn't read 1 book. I didn't open 1 book to do any math problems. I would be so behind and just dealing with what's going on at home. It would be better for me to self-protect by dropping out of school. So we have kids from 1 to 12 that are representation of about 2 generations. We have to figure out what's going to happen with those kids, right? So you think about, we're arguing about how kids are going back.
So you think the schools should open now?
I don't know if the schools should open. I think that I just got an email today about there's a court in New Bedford, and we're like not really opening in the courts, but New Bedford just had to close because 10 people have COVID. So if you think about, so this is my concern about opening schools. It's not just a safety issue, it's what happens, the what if is my problem. So if I drop off my child and I walk in, I know a lot of parents that walk their child into the school. So if that child comes in, if the parent comes in, the parent now tests positive, that whole school closes for 2 weeks, right? And then on top of it, all of the collaterals that interacted with that child, they also have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So parents are quarantined, their employers all have to quarantine. So we're just gonna have a domino effect by 1 person infecting 1 school. So because of that, I struggle. I don't know if we should open, mainly because as a single parent in the past, I will tell you, I have to set up my kids in advance. Who's gonna watch my kids, who's not? We need direction. And if you get a call on Monday night at 8 p.m. that you can't go to work tomorrow because you're now in quarantine for 2 weeks, what happens then? Right. So I think that's my problem is the what if. If we're going to say we want people to go back to work, we want to start this new normal, we're not ready to start a new normal. We haven't even accepted where we're at right now. Forget trying to figure out what the new normal is, right? So I think that we should be remote, or at the very least, just say it. Right? I just want you to say it. Let me know if I need to restructure a space so my son who has learning needs actually has a consistent space to be. Right? Let me know if I can't go to court, if I can't, we went on September 1 and you asked me to come back, I need to know if there's actually going to be someone there to take care of my children so I can come back. I need to know what it is. And the problem that we have right now, everything's up in the air. To me, the fact that it's up in the air is enough for you to say don't open. Right.
And now listen, I know that since you are a lawyer and you've dealt with criminal law for how long has it been?
I've been an attorney since 2008. So I've been practicing. I have my own firm since 2013.
Okay, yeah.
So some time.
So you have good experience with criminal law, with criminals.
Alleged criminals.
Alleged criminals. You know, everybody's innocent to prove everybody's innocent to proven guilty, right? But that's not real.
That's not true.
That's not true because if you was innocent to proven guilty, then you would be incarcerated, and you have to sometimes show up in the courtroom in chains. I don't get that. Why we insult people's intelligence by saying that? That's stupid stuff.
That's the bail system that they're trying to.
That's just stupid stuff that happens in the world, in the world of criminal justice, politics, whatever. It's just, and so we need to call in. This young lady has a lot to say about what goes on. She has some history in terms of what goes on in her field of understanding about the law. And also, you can ask her questions about, the issues that we're dealing with the racial unrest in this nation. There's a lot of racial tension in this nation. So give us a call at 857-337-0800, 857-353-0207. That's 857-353-0207. All right. So I have a question. Now we're dealing with people are talking about, we say where black men are being killed by police, alarming rates and stuff like that. And then white person may say more white people get killed by police than black people, And how I view it is this: there's way more white people in this country than are black people. That's one.
That's the truth.
Secondly, we gotta look at things proportionately, right? Secondly, how many white people we know have gotten shot because they was white?
Cool. True.
Because they was white.
True.
Because they was white.
Because we've only seen the statistics on death.
That's the thing we're talking about. Is why is a death sentence? Because you're walking down the street, as a black man. That's the argument that needs to be clarified. And I think we need to do more listening. And how do you approach that type of thing in terms of helping
as an
people?
attorney?
No, just educate.
That's totally different.
Just educating people about I can't tell you about being a woman.
No,
I can't. So I'm gonna have to shut my mouth and listen to you.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? But everybody's talking about us, and they're not asking us.
Right.
No. So what did we do? I think it was May. We did the We See You, We Hear You, and you opened up the event for us after the George Floyd murder. I get a lot of phone calls, a lot of people who were calling asking how allies, how do we properly support you? I don't want to say the wrong thing. I know I can give money,
right,
but that money is not enough for me. What can I do? So we did a campaign of We See You, We Hear You that went as far as Australia, where we had people light a candle. Bishop actually started the ceremonies off in prayer for us. And it was really a way for our allies to see and hear us. And the reason why I thought that was important is a lot of times people will jump in and say, I'm on your side, and then they start speaking for you. And you're not listening to what I'm telling you I need, right? And it's not because they're doing it to be insensitive to you.
Right.
What they're doing is thinking, I know what's right because that's how it is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that movement's over. Our new movement is, you need to see us. Because that's the first thing. If you don't see me, you can't hear me. Right, so when someone says I'm colorblind, that means you can't see me.
Right. I hate that.
Don't erase my history. Don't erase everything that I am. I proudly I am one of the only black people. There's one of 3 of us that go to Norfolk County for court all the time. I proudly wear my natural hair. It can be in an afro. It can be slicked back. I wear it because I am proud of who I am.
Absolutely.
And when you take that away from me, when you say that you don't see color, please stop saying that, people.
Right.
Please stop saying you do see color. I know that they're saying it not to be disrespectful,
right,
but for us who are receiving it, it means that you are erasing what's really truly going on.
Right.
So let's start with one thing: you see us.
Yeah.
So you see all of me.
See the various colors. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
You see the rainbow.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's beautiful.
That's a beautiful sight, right? And so diversity and ethnicities,
it's great.
It's a great
Yes.
thing. It's a great thing, and we learn. I would say when I was in school, and not so much in college and in graduate school, but when I was in from 7th grade to 12th grade, it was predominantly white people in our school. But we had people, Asians. We had those from the Hispanic or Latin American background, and we were able to talk. We learned from each other, And I think what messed things up is when we did the forced busing and desegregation, and you force. Nobody like anything to be forced on them. So that kind of messed stuff up. But see, I was having a conversation about 2 weeks ago. No, I was ear hustling because I was in the store just paying for some socks. So it was like 4 white people talking about
the socks you're not wearing.
He told you not to talk about that.
Cameron's not there.
So that's a good one. So what happened was, they were talking about the person who does the what is that? The food thing. The food gourmet, Phantom Gourmet.
Phantom Gourmet.
That person said something that was racially insensitive, and so that person they had to their job was they had to leave. They was just they stopped coming on the air. So I was like, interesting. They were telling each other, some of them, that wasn't racist. That wasn't racist. Oh. So I told him, I said, what are you talking about? So he told me what he was talking about. I said, so he said, well, this is my perspective. I said, you can't say
you don't have one.
What is racist, and your perspective doesn't matter here,
right?
Because you're a white person talking about a white person who offended black people. So how is it that you can give an opinion on this? See, we're not listening to each
Absolutely.
other. So they looked
because
at
they can't see you.
No, they looked at me and it was like two of them knew me because they had seen me before, and they looked at me like, wow. Then one conveniently walked away. That's too heavy for me. And then my son said, Dad, you didn't realize you was educating them. They didn't mean any harm.
No, but they need.
But they needed that education.
Well, and I think that's what I tell people is that you can't argue my feelings.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
If I say you hurt my feelings, you can't. Your first response can't be no, because it's not. It's mine. I own it, and I'm telling you that my feelings are hurt. And because I'm telling you my feelings are hurt, we now have to have a conversation. But the first thing you have to recognize that you don't own the power to tell me I shouldn't be offended, I shouldn't be hurt.
Right.
Those, because they're all mine. What I find is that it's not intentional that I'm saying something racist, or it's not intentional. It's what we have let brush aside for a long time. Right. And so we get we brush things aside. We right now have this huge opportunity to change a lot. So if we do go all virtual, one of the benefits of all virtual is that your K1 and your K2 students can now learn about racism at a very young age. Right. So we don't have to worry about changing the history books, the physical books. This is all online.
Wow.
We can have age-appropriate conversations about tolerance, acceptance of each other now. And you have those conversations all the way through until you get to a certain age where you have to read these harder conversations, have to read these harder books. But we have to do it. We can't just think that Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X represent everyone.
Right.
There was a lot of stuff that happened in between and before and after that.
Right.
With me, when I first learned of our history, just because of everything, my grandparents actually served in World War II. But my grandmother was, on my mother's side, she was from Georgia, my grandfather was from Virginia, but they just didn't talk about those things with me. And, but I remember calling my grandmother, my aunt, and my mother, and some others when I was in college, because our books are always on the sale table. And so I grabbed a book about civil rights. That was the first time in college. I'm a mother at this point, and I found out that Martin Luther King's speech did not start off with "I have a dream."
Right.
Because every educational system I had gone into never talked about us.
Mahalia Jackson said, Martin, tell him about the dream.
Yeah.
Martin, tell him about the dream. Mahalia Jackson was one that actually
had him do it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing that we have to correct, right? Because when we have these conversations like we're having right now, no one's talked about it to other races. We know about it because we experience it. You may learn from your family.
So you're saying some stuff that we learn as black kids growing up in school, that we need to relearn those things. They need to tell us the truth. But Christopher Columbus, I can't even say it. Christopher Columbus did discover America though, right?
No. Don't say that. Christopher Columbus was, to me, he was on vacation and found something that he liked and decided to take over it. You can't take something that already exists. You can't discover something that's already there.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I found a great suit for you, Pastor Matt. It's gray. You're wearing it.
Yeah.
Dude, what's wrong with you?
But we're told that, right? We are constantly, and it's not just. It's across the board. So we have a responsibility at our home to educate our children.
The sad thing is black people have taught other black people that.
Yes. Well, because that's what we were
taught. And we passed it on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
we didn't know any
now,
better.
but we also had a point where we couldn't accept it ourselves, right? Like wearing natural hair is something new,
yes.
right? So I've been natural for over 10 years, but I remember when I went natural, people were like, "Why aren't you like relaxing your hair?"
Right.
Because I like it like this. Like I like the thickness of it, and it makes it thin.
Yeah.
But I had to explain that, not to my white friends. I had to explain it to my black friends on why I did it. And then 2-3 years ago, I cut it all off and shaved off the sides. And that was, why would you do that? Because it's hair, it's mine, right? But we have been conditioned that we are supposed to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that the first time I did it, and it was like my birthday weekend, so I wasn't at court, and then I went into court and I was like, oh crap, they're gonna say something about my hair, right? And so we do think about that. We do know that we're going to have questions and people are going to say something, but that's something that we conditioned on ourselves. And we just have to make sure, one, that we start to untrain ourselves and that we train the next generation to be appreciative of themselves, understand who they are, and learn the truth about us. We can't wait for the school books to change. But we are in a situation right now where we actually can start telling the truth, because then you can't argue that.
Right.
You can't argue history, we can't argue World War II. How can you argue racism?
That's right. Yep. We gotta go. It's
time flies when you're having fun. Oh my goodness.
Thank you all.
What's the last, some things you want to share with us as we get ready to leave?
Actually,
I'm gonna give her a minute to share.
I just wanted to hear what your vision is after September 1st. Once you're in office, what can the community expect?
Yeah.
What's the change?
We have a lot of meetings coming up. So after September 1, we have a lot of meetings. It's not Stephanie going into the State House. This is our seat. This is not my seat.
Right.
And I think that we need to get back to really understanding whose seat that is. And so a lot of meetings. Figuring out what should our priorities be, how do we get there, and then meeting with colleagues in the State House so that when we get there on day one, we're actually working, we're moving. You get sworn in, that's great, but I want to make sure that the bill's filed and we have enough co-sponsorship. I want to make sure that I've activated all of you all so that when it's time for this bill to come up for a hearing, there's a line around the corner to talk about issues that impact us. We are so reactive in this community. We hear about when the safety seatbelt laws coming out, we're going to the hearing. Why didn't we stop it or intervene in it during the writing of it, right? So let's get involved early. Let's stop being reactive and start being proactive. Let's start putting bills that actually benefit us, and we're going to do that together. So a lot of meetings, and you're going to be lined up around the corner so you can testify and make sure things come out of committee, hit the floor, and actually become law so that we can start equalizing things.
Awesome.
Yes.
I'm blessed. I am truly blessed. It's the first time we've met, and I'm so impressed.
Thank
God
you.
God bless you.
Impressed with both of you all.
All right. So listen, we are encouraging you to tune in next Thursday, 1 o'clock, for the Pastor's Perspective. I'm William Dickerson.
Pastor Stephen Mack.
And so we're encouraging you to tune in next time. And we do apologize not being in studio as much, but we endeavor to be able to take some of your calls and to share. And so you got to get into that mode of doing it. So until next time, may God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you.